say a little bit sad, but it's going to be see you later, and definitely not goodbye. And so, I figured for our very, very last story time for this Jewish year, I would bring you so it's called Always and Olivia. And the cool thing is that it's a storybook, and it's got pictures and everything, and a lot of stuff happens in it. It's also a true story. It's the story of the woman who wrote it, her family. And it might be hard to believe when I'm reading it. You might think, there's no way this could be real, Rabbi. For all these things, this is crazy. How could this be true? How could this be real? It is actually her own family history, which is pretty cool. So keep that in mind when I'm reading it and you think, there's no way this could happen. It did. And it's a remarkable, true family history of this Jewish family, which is really, really cool. It's called Always and Olivia. And of course, afterwards we will have our Kiddush and our Motzi, which is probably the most interesting Motzi we have done so far. I'm very excited. And it ties together because, Anyway, this is Always and Olivia. A remarkable family history. That's what it says. Great-Grandma Olivia, were you really alive back in slavery times? Yeah, Carol Olivia. I was 10 years old when the slaves were freed. I was living right here in Portsmouth, Virginia. When I heard the Emancipation Proclamation read, I saw all the black folks were so happy, and I was happy right there with them. But we weren't slaves then. Our slaves were long, long time ago, back in Egypt. It says it right in the Bible. You see, my great-grandma Sarah was a Jewish woman. She sailed the high seas to America. That's what her great-grandma's saying. Now we're going back in time. Hundreds of years ago, there was a Jewish family living in Spain, near the sea. Spain was a dangerous place for Jews back then, and one day someone stood in the street and said, all the Jews have to leave Spain right away or the king's army is going to come after you. It was a terrible time. This is true. The mother, Naomi, the father, Jacob, and their 5 children gathered a few possessions and ran down to the ocean. They boarded a small boat in the middle of the night and sailed off for Portugal. Portugal and Spain are neighbors. They actually are kind of on the same piece of land. In Portugal, they lived in the small village of Almancil. So Naomi and Jacob took the name Almancil as their family name. They gave up their Jewish name because they were afraid to be known as Jews because of what happened to them in Spain, obviously. The Almancil family loved Portugal. Benjamin, the oldest son, was a fisherman alongside his father, and Hannah, his sister, sold fish beside her mother in the market. On holidays, the Almancil family loved to walk the tall cliffs of the Valle de Lobo and look down on the ocean. But on Fridays, Naomi secretly made a special Shabbat bread called challah. Hannah went to the sea cliff and picked flowers for the Shabbat table. Her brother Benjamin brought home the best fish from the seashore, and every Friday, their father brought Hannah and Benjamin small wooden toys that he carved. He made them himself while he was on the sea waiting for the fish to bite. They didn't want people to see them doing Jewish things, so Naomi closed the shutters. She closed the coverings of the windows very tightly before she lit the candles. There's a lot of families, even families in our own congregation, who have very similar stories in their history. But the family's happiness in Portugal did not last. Just like in Spain, people began to persecute the Jews. That means they made life very difficult for them. Once again, the Almancils were forced to pack up their few possessions and leave very quickly. This time, they boarded a big ship with many other Portuguese Jews, and they sailed across the Mediterranean Sea, past Spain, past France, until they landed in Venice, Italy. It's a story, so many twists and turns. For many, many generations, that means a very, very, very long time, the Almancil family lived happily in Venice among other Jews who had also escaped. Life was good, but they never forgot Portugal. See, they got married, they lived their lives. Life was good in Italy. In 1787, one of the descendants of Naomi and Jacob, Asher Almancil, and his wife Miriam, had a daughter. They named her Sarah Shulamit. Her story is very interesting. They sang a song of joy the first time they took her to the synagogue in Venice. And Sarah Shulamit really was full of joy. She learned to dance. She sang so many beautiful songs. Her father would take her for walks by the sea and tell her the story of their ancestors who lived by the sea in Spain, Portugal, and then Italy. She especially liked to hear about Hannah, the Jewish girl who sold fish in the market and loved to walk the sea cliffs in Portugal. And I never forgot Portugal. The humidity is making my hair go whoop. One day, Sarah was walking by the sea wearing a dark headscarf, typical of those worn by Jewish women. A group of pirates recognized her as Jewish and they kidnapped her for ransom. That means that people hold on to you and they kidnap you and they wait until someone gives them lots of money and then they let you go. Ransom. They brought her to their pirate ship with a bunch of other captured Jews. And they planned to sail across the high seas to North Africa, where they knew there were Jews living there too. There's always been Jews kind of all over the world. And there were Jews with a lot of money, and they would pay gold and silver to help free their brothers and sisters, to help free these other Jewish folks. That's Sarah being taken to the pirate ship. I told you the story is wild. All through the voyage, that's all the time that they were sailing, Sarah was terrified. Where was she going? Who was going to help her? She cried when she saw that evil pirate flag flapping in the breeze. But all the time Sarah was crying, a man named James was watching. James had been kidnapped too. The pirates threatened him. They said, "You have to join us." So he was pretending to be a pirate, but really he was waiting to escape. When the pirate ship sailed near the city of Tripoli, that's in Libya, which is in the north part of Africa, James whispered to Sarah, "I'm going to help you. Don't worry." Grew his hair out long, pirate style, I suppose. Together they came up with a plan. James tied Sarah's hands behind her back. He put a cloth over her face, put the rope behind her waist, and when he was sure the captain was asleep in his cabin, James pretended to drag her, and she pretended to be crying, and all the pirates said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm taking this woman to Zini, who is a rich Jewish person on Alexandria Road. He'll pay a lot of money for her, a huge ransom. The captain told me I should take her." And the pirates left James and let him take Sarah off the ship and walk away, because they thought he was going to come back with a big ransom, a lot of money for this Jewish girl. Oh yeah, he's going to come back because he's a pirate now, right? What do you think? As soon as they were out of sight, James cut the ropes from Sarah's hand, and he took away the cloth that was in front of her face. They smiled at each other because it was good to be free. The two of them decided to seek help at a synagogue. Makes sense, where all the other Jews are. They waited until the men came for afternoon prayers. Sarah approached them, and she said, "Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. I'm a Jew. Please help me in the name of our God." The men listened to Sarah's story. "Those pirates are going to be here tomorrow with the rest of those stolen Jews," the rabbi said. "If they discover you and James has escaped, it's not going to be good. And if they find you here, they're going to harm the rest of us too. Sarah, you have to hide. James, we have an idea for you and Sarah both." They wore really awesome purple clothes. At least there's that. They walked up a hill, and the rabbi pointed to some ships in the port. "Those ships belong to the United States," the rabbi said. "James and Sarah, you have to get to that port. You have to get on one of those ships and sail to a new life in America. Here's some money to help you get away. And Sarah, tonight's Shabbat, so here are some candles to light when you get to wherever you're going to be hiding." Sarah was very unhappy to have to leave James. It's a bit of a romantic story. And James did not want to leave Sarah. He whispered in her ear, asking her to meet with him at the boat that evening. And she said yes. Aww. When they got to the ship, the Marine captain agreed to let them come aboard. He also agreed to marry them. They sailed to the beautiful, peaceful Georgia Sea Islands off the coast of the United States, where pirates wouldn't bother them anymore. The year was 1805. After her wedding, Sarah began using her Hebrew middle name, Shulamit. It reminded her of her Jewish heritage. Shulamit, you hear Shulamit, you hear the word Shalom in there, because they're related. Shulamit means peace, and she wanted peace after all of her family's wandering on the high seas. Again, all this, true story. In Georgia, Sarah, Shulamit, and James lived with Geechees, black people who had come from West Africa. They wove clothes and sang songs so beautiful that they enchanted the ocean tides. These Geechees were free people, even though at that time other black people were slaves in the United States. Sarah began using her middle name, Olivia, instead of her Hebrew name, Shulamit. Even in America, she was worried about people hurting her because she was Jewish. She chose Olivia because it made her think of an olive branch, which is a symbol of peace. Sarah, Olivia, and James felt at home among the Geechees. They wore the Geechee clothing and they sang the enchanting songs. And Sarah, Olivia lit Shabbat candles like the ones the rabbi had given her in Chipperley. Sarah and James's children married Geechees, as did their children's children and their children's children. They earned their living catching and selling fish. Sarah did not have a synagogue to go to on the Georgia Sea Islands, so eventually she forgot almost everything about being Jewish. But some things Sarah did not forget. The pictures. She didn't forget her father Asher, and she named her son after him. In English, he was known as Oscar. Oscar, Asher, kind of sounds the same. And Sarah didn't forget that her middle name, Shulamit, meant peace. She asked her children to give one little girl in every generation a name that meant peace. And Sarah did not forget to light the Shabbat candles on Friday nights. And Sarah's daughter didn't forget to light the candles on Friday nights. And Sarah's daughter's daughter didn't forget to light the Shabbat candles on Friday nights. And her daughter's daughter's daughter is me. Me being her, not me. That would be cool. That's this woman in the story. And so, Carol, Olivia, that's our story. And I have been waiting all summer for you to visit me so I could tell you. That's such a good story, Great-Grandma Olivia. Is it really true? Don't you know it is absolutely true? Well, the most important parts we definitely know are true. There really was a Jewish man named Asher in Italy who had a daughter named Sarah who was taken by pirates. And you know your father's name is Oscar, which is another way of saying Asher. And you were named after my great-grandmother, Sarah. Well, what about my name, Great-Grandma? I thought I was named after you. Am I named after your great-grandmother, Sarah, too? Yes, both, child, both. In every generation, a little girl is named Olivia. You are the Olivia of your generation. That is how we remember. And there's their Shabbat candles. And this is the part afterwards where the woman who put together this book talks about how this is really her story and all the parts that she loved about writing this book. And she didn't do the pictures. Someone else did the pictures, but I'm sure she told him what to draw. And so this is the book, Always an Olivia, because there is always an Olivia in every generation. They might have gone very, very far. They might have had many, many adventures in their families that many of us didn't have in our families, but I think it's a really, really cool way to celebrate and remember your family, especially when your family history is so interesting. I think all of us have really cool family histories. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, and who your ancestors were, and where your grandparents were from, or your great-grandparents were. Everyone's family history is really, really interesting, and I think it's really cool to ask questions because you never know the kind of stories that you're going to end up hearing. And all of us are made up of lots of different parts, which, keep that in mind for the motzi. So before we do Kiddush and before we do motzi, I want to do the very last blessing of the children for this Jewish year, because we're going to come back in the fall. So over all of our girls, hand on your head, or if there's like an adult with you who you would like them to put a hand on your head, that's nice too, if that's okay. So over all of our daughters, let's say, Yisimech Elohim, may God bless you and make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And over all our boys, hand on your own head, or maybe someone else can put a hand on your head, I don't know. Over all of our boys, we say, Yisimcha Elohim, may God bless you and make you like Ephraim and Menashe. And over all of our children, so if you're there with children and grandchildren, you can big group hug, or if you're there by yourself, nice big hug for yourself. Or maybe just everybody gives themselves a nice big hug, because sometimes it's a nice little hug. Over all of our children, say, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and protect you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha, may God shine the divine light on you always. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom, may God grant you all the blessings that we are so, so blessed to be able to get, especially that of shalom, peace, and let us all say, Amen. If you have some grape juice or wine, that's wonderful. If you just have pretend grape juice or wine, that's also wonderful. So over our grape juice or wine, if you're over 21, We'll say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. And I told you the motzi is going to be a special motzi because we have 2 different kinds of bread for motziing over. I thought it'd be really cool because we're talking about how people's backgrounds have lots of different parts. And that's a really, really cool thing to think about. Ask your parents questions, ask your grandparents questions, because all the parts are great because they're all parts that make up you. And that's really exciting. So I thought for our motzi, instead of having just 1 challah, we'd have 2, because traditionally we have 2 loaves for Friday night. And so I thought, why not have both a tortilla and an English muffin? So we have 2 different kinds of bread. And they taste different a little. I mean, they do taste somewhat different. And they're kind of originally made by different kinds of people. They look different. They smell somewhat different. And they taste somewhat different. But they all count as motzi. They all count as bread, challah, for all intents and purposes. And it's really cool that no matter what it looks like, it's great to use for this beautiful Jewish blessing over bread. So over whatever bread you have, over my English muffin and my tortilla, we'll say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You can say Amen. Thank you so much for joining me for Always and Olivia, a true story about this woman's family history, which goes back to many, many different places, many, many different times, lots of different folks, and they all combined to make her and her wonderful, amazing history, which is a great reminder to ask your parents and your grandparents about your family history, because you never know the cool stories that you're going to hear. Thank you for joining me for a blessing over the children, which is a blessing over everybody, really, because everybody's somebody's child. And also for our kiddush and our very special motzi of different kinds of bread that all do the same kind of thing, because in Judaism we say the same blessing over all the bread, no matter what kind of bread it is, because we celebrate all kinds of bread. Thank you so much for joining me for story time. It has been so much fun, and I'm so glad that we're going to keep doing this. We're just going to keep doing it in the fall. We're going to take a little bit of a summer vacation, and then it's going to be high holidays. Oh my goodness. And then we will definitely restart after that in October. So I'm looking forward to doing more story time, but also I'm looking forward to seeing you at all sorts of things that we're going to be doing. Lots of in-person stuff, virtual stuff. We have so many great times and opportunities to reconnect. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for watching these and for emailing me after or Facebook messaging me or calling me. And I really, really love every single time somebody reaches out to say hi. And it's a lot of fun. And so I'm glad I could do this with you and for you. Have a wonderful Shabbat. Have a wonderful summer. Stay safe.